Believe me, 36 years ago, I was sitting where you're sitting today, not knowing my future any better than you know yours. But I assure you that if you looked at everyone who succeeded and you took a picture of them and then moved forward, you know, the number of years, you would see that we all start at the same place. So I went into my first company, and I learned that through discipline and hard work, learning skill, learning product, and learning how to communicate, learning how to serve, that I could actually be the top in my company, and I was. And so that I got the opportunity of serving then as a sales manager, and then the opportunity of a national sales manager very shortly in general management. And then I actually got to start so you can see these two companies that I started with. One was industrial chemicals, which doesn't sound very sexy, but we were a $500 million company, and so there were a lot of opportunities. And then I had the opportunity of being the national sales manager for an orthopedic company, which was a lot of fun, traveling all over the country, working with dozens of representatives, and seeing our product, which was patented, go into every hospital in the country. So there were a lot of opportunities in those early years, and I thought to myself, if I can build a company for somebody else, if I can build 3 different sales territories, if I have the opportunity then to learn about supply chain, and the opportunity to learn about finance, and the opportunity to learn about leadership and training and hiring and recruiting outstanding team members, then certainly I can do that on my own. And so I like to say that entrepreneurs are not foolish. They don't just stop what they're doing, bet the farm, you know, mortgage their homes, and then all of a sudden, you know, everything goes well. We're very disciplined about how we do what we do, and so when I mortgaged my home, I did it with a lot of thought and intent, and I had 3 kids at the time. There was certainly nothing guaranteed in life. And it was a simple product. Again, we manufactured our own line of medical and safety products for business and industry. So we bootstrapped the company through internal profits. One of the things that we did that was unique, we developed a protected distribution model. But inside of our protected distribution model, we developed a proprietary sales management, sales leadership model. So, for example, you would think that in Fortune 500 companies, with the amount of resources that they have, that their sales systems are just rock stars. But they're generally, it isn't necessarily so. That's why you find companies out of Germany and other training companies and Fortune 500 companies hire them to help train and consult with them in developing their sales systems. So I took the approach of reverse engineering everything that I had done so that I would be able to pass it along to my team. And so I built out proprietary systems. We wrote our own sales manuals, our own sales leadership programs, so that we could pass those along to our distributors, and it created something that was unique. Allowed us to scale up fairly rapidly, and then we sold our company to Cintas, the uniform people, back in Cincinnati. It's today about a $10 billion company, and so it's clearly a market leader. So it gave me the opportunity of doing some things that were sort of important to me. I have long been a history buff, and so one of the things that I did was I took a number of years, 3 years actually, and 12 to 14-hour days. I actually studied early Christianity, wrote a couple of books, and was able to fulfill some other things that were important to me. So then, in the middle of all that, I had some friends come to me and say, you know, we think that there's this market in the automotive space that we ought to attack, and we think that you should come in and lead the charge and that you should fund it. And, so I said, well, let's explore this market. This is before the lean startup. How many of you have heard about the lean startup? I hope all of you have. If you haven't, you're going to hear about it today. It's the most important thing that's happened in entrepreneurship, period, ever. And I I introduced it to Brigham Young University when I came to Brigham Young in 2010. We were the first university in the country to adopt the Lean Startup, and it's made a massive difference in the number of companies, scalable companies, that we could bring out of the university, multi-million-dollar companies that scaled very rapidly because they follow the principles of Lean. So we'll talk a little bit about that today. But I did not follow the principles of Lean in 2000 because they didn't exist. Steve Blank hadn't yet wrote his book, The 4 Steps to the Epiphany, and the Lean Startup hadn't been written, and Nail It and Scale It hadn't been written. And so we did the traditional route of building a business where you think you've got a great idea, so then you go and hire a bunch of people, and you build something, and then you start to put it out to the marketplace, believing that they're going to love what you love. The only problem is that there hasn't been enough testing done, and so you don't have to miss the mark by very much to miss it. So at the end of the day, we ended up scrapping $1 million worth of development, so that's not cheap. I always like to say that I have my $10,000 mistakes, my $100,000 mistakes, my $1 million mistakes, and I wish I could end it at $1 million, but I've made bigger mistakes than that. And so I have what a lot of entrepreneurs call scar tissue. And we all have it because nobody knows what nobody doesn't know. So the difference between business then and entrepreneurship is that business is executing on a known business model. But entrepreneurship is discovering the answers to unknown, untested, untried, unproven business models that don't yet exist. So when you try to teach those in business schools, as they did for 80 years, from around the 1940s to the present, until about 6-7 years ago, it was they sort of looked at entrepreneurship as big business's little brother, and they're not even in the same universe, let alone on the same planet. Which is, and I'll get to that in just a minute as to why that's so important. So in my background here with APU Solutions, we didn't follow Lean, and because of that, just get to the bottom here a little bit, we wasted a lot of time and a lot of money. Now, one of the things that you can't predict, for example, when we thought we had nailed sort of the model that was going to work, then we had an important problem that manifested itself. And that was that the insurers hadn't all gone wireless yet. That was a new phenomenon back in 2000. And it actually took about 6 years for the whole industry to go wireless. So that meant that we were 6 years to profitability. It's a long time to fund your own venture. And so I brought 3 other people into my venture that helped me fund the business. We did fund the business, and over time, then we were able to penetrate the marketplace, and we had a very successful exit in 2012 to a major company called Autotex, and they recently were acquired for about $6 billion. And the importance of relationships is that in my new venture, they're also a customer and very interested in the long-term outcome of my current venture. So there are things that happen along the way in company building that you can't foresee, like, for example, partners. And so I was in France, in Paris, taking my wife on our 20th wedding anniversary, and 2 of my partners, officers, went to our bank account and emptied the bank account, and then they left. So I can sue them, I can take them to criminal court, and I can also take them to civil court, but now my venture is embroiled in litigation, and the ability to obtain funding it's not there. It's impossible to do it. And there's such it takes so much time, it's so distracting emotionally and otherwise that it's just really hard to even think about getting engaged in a lawsuit, even though what they did was horribly wrong. Another thing that you can't foresee, for example, is that we officially started our business on January 14, 2000. And my partners, of course, as the CEO, my job was to oversee the growth of the whole company and to make sure we had sufficient funds. So in really just about 30 to 40 days, I obtained a commitment for $8 million in funding. And we signed the document on March 13th, 2000. And on April 13th, a month later, we signed a definitive agreement. That was the day that the tech market dropped 318 points, and it was the beginning of the end of the internet bubble of the late 90s. So we lost our funding. We got the first $1 million, and we didn't get the other $7 million. And since we had already sort of like wasted the first $1 million in development, the wrong development, then we were at that crossroads, where leadership comes in. And we're going to talk about leadership today. This is where my entire team could have just walked. But instead, I stood in front of the entire team and said, I've been here before, and we're going to get through this, and we are going to make a successful company. And those of you here who remain here for the ride are going to profit and do very well. And if you choose to leave, I understand. No one left. A few months later, when as we began to raise funds and they started to see that, yeah, we were going to be able to survive this, then enthusiasm really grew inside the company. Interestingly, because it was going to take so long, I decided that rather than just sit around doing a bunch of stuff that I could have done, but I had a good partner, I said, Charles, I'm going to have you run the company. I'm going to go start another business, and there's no reason for, I'm already not getting paid. I'm happy to continue to fund the company, but I've already worked for free for 2 years, so I don't think I'm going to work any longer for free when I don't know how long it's going to be, but I'm going to continue to fund the company and raise capital for the company, which we did. And I started a new business called Best Final with a partner of mine, and in the time, and it was a brick and mortar company. I could tell you some long stories about that, but the fact is that even though we had people who have a big head start on us, we started in 2002, and we had 2 big competitors in Utah, that one in Davis County that had been in business since '85, another that had been in business since 1992. We started in 2002, and in 5 years, we have eclipsed them by 3 times. They were 2 of the largest in the country. We are now by far the largest vinyl fence company in the country, and we sell to a private equity group just before the downturn of 2008, so it's good timing. Timing is everything. So I did want to draw attention to this last bullet point, never give up. Anybody know where that came from?
Is that Winston Churchill?
Winston Churchill. So giving the commencement exercises for Oxford, he stands up to give the address, and he looks across the podium, putting his hands on the podium just like this, and he says, never give up, and he sits down. And the chancellor gets up and he says, is that it? And he gets up and he takes a long time and he looks across the whole audience again, and then he says, never give up, and he sits down, and that's it. Now, you would think that's a bit of show, but actually he's right, because business people, entrepreneurs, they only fail when they quit. Because if you keep putting one foot in front of the other, and you are thoughtful, and you're problem solving, you're eventually going to get there. So you just have to have done enough thought ahead of time to make sure that you don't run out of money, or that you can survive until that period of time, and we will talk a little bit about that. So AutoExplore purchased that business, as I said, and then Best Final, I talked about that. There is an interesting lesson here about Best Final. People often wonder, how did we do that? And I likened, I'm going to actually get to this, so I'm going to tell this part of the story a little bit later. So hold me to that, and we're going to tell you, I'm going to use my basketball example. But, and then I went on to run one of my portfolio companies, Benefit Communication Insourcing. And the great thing about Benefit Communication Insourcing, my best friend came to me in 2004. He had been selling insurance for about 25 years, and he had a partner, and he didn't like the fact that his partner controlled it and dictated the destiny, and he was not a risk taker. My friend Don is a big risk taker. And so at any rate, he came to me and said, I've got this idea about the insurance industry that I think we can exploit. I'm a little bit nervous about it, but we already have a couple of cases where it's worked really well. And so I examined the case study with him, and I said, Don, I think you have something that's really unique here, and you've already proven the concept. So I think you shouldn't have any concern about buying your partner out. And so he did, and I invested a bunch of money into it as well. It was a good thing. And today, Benefit Communication Insourcing is the second largest company in its industry, and will overtake the leader probably by the end of next year. And we basically insource our people into the HR departments of large corporations north of 4,000 employees, and we enroll them in their employee benefits. Now, if you've ever had that, you're too young to have had that happen very much, but I'm here to tell you that it doesn't happen very well. When they have those open enrollments, people understand so little about their benefits that they don't know how to access them or utilize them properly or gain the most benefit from them. So our people are experts in that area, and they're experts in communication. And we spend a lot of money to train them, to make them truly gifted in what they do. So for the privilege of having these people inside conveying employee benefits to their employees, they allow us free access to be able to sell ancillary benefits that aren't offered by the company. And so I call ourselves like a virtuous Trojan horse. So, because we are planted inside of the business, we're part of the HR team, we're not allowed to sell. In other words, we don't allow our people to sell, but we allow them to educate. And our take rates are 70% versus 20% using the models that are traditional out there today. So it's been a beautiful model, and continues to have a lot of success. And then the dean of the Marriott School called me one day and asked me, Gary Cornea, he asked if I would consider running the Center for Entrepreneurship. And I said, you really don't want me? Because I am not an academic, and I will create some headaches for you inside of the Marriott School, because I'll ask for things that you typically won't want to give me. And they said, well, we're willing to take that risk. And I said, really? What about those 15 guys in Salt Lake? At any rate, I decided to take the risk, and I understood the environment that I was going to be going into. And myself, I am not, and I don't wear this as a badge of honor, believe me, but I dropped out of college to do my ventures. I have all 5 of my children graduated from Brigham Young University, so you can tell that I think a great deal of education. And myself, I understand the value of education, which is why my library is literally, it's several thousand books. And when people come into my library and they ask, have you really read all those? And I said, no, but about 80% of them. And so I understand the importance of education, and you should too. And that the more that you read, the more that you'll learn, the more knowledge that you'll obtain, and the wiser that you'll become as you gain experience and apply the knowledge that you've learned. But with that caveat, they brought me in to run the Center for Entrepreneurship. So the very first year, we introduced the lean startup approach to starting companies. The second thing that I did was I threw out the business plan competition immediately, and I introduced the International Business Model Competition, which now has about 5,000 universities across the country, or globe rather, from 38 different countries that participate. We also introduced the Miller New Venture Challenge. I went to the Millers, Gail Miller, and laid out our program, and she endowed our program, and so we've had amazing success with that program. And I'll show you how we model that in just a minute. But in year one, and this is an important lesson with leadership. In year one, we were able to turn on a dime everything. Now, I could talk to the administrators of your school and the deans of the business school and ask them how hard it is to change curriculum, how long it would take to change curriculum, and you would get the answer that it might be 2 to 3 years to go through the entire system. And even at Brigham Young's very slow process, we got it changed doing entrepreneurial stuff that year. In like a month, I went to all the entrepreneurship professors and got them to buy in to where we were going. So you can change, but you have to learn principles of leadership in order to get that done. So another thing that I'm going to get into is vision. When you start a company, you'll create a vision for the company. And the difference between vision and mission is this. Vision is where are you going to go, and how will you know when you got there? I want that to sort of penetrate your minds and think about it. And a mission is why do you exist? It's important to understand the distinction between those two things. So when we established a vision at the Rollins Center, just as I had for my businesses, we said that we will be the global leader in successful campus-inspired entrepreneurial ventures. And everyone knew that that meant scalable ventures. And that's not really popular in a lot of universities who will say that it's not their job to do that sort of thing, but rather to educate, and they're right. The most important thing that they can do is to educate your mind so that you can take that education and then use your own creative forces to be able to accomplish what you need to. But at the end of the day, if you can do both, why not? And there is hardly a better time to start businesses than when you're young because you have less to risk. When I started my business, even at 29, I said to myself, well, I've got a mortgage, I got a couple car payments, and I have 3 kids, and they're all depending on me. But I knew that it was only going to get worse. So I said, you know, now's the time. What have you got to lose? So you just have to know how to do it. You just have to have great ideas and know what you're going to do. So then, these are the 4 things that we built our program around: curriculum, events, competitions, and mentoring. And I don't have time to go into too much of that right now. And then, in the middle, this is how it always happens. It's just like, it's crazy. I've been an investor in companies for a long time, an angel investor. And I had a young man come to me that had graduated from college. I knew from the university. He'd since graduated a few years, 2 or 3 years. And he had this idea. And I said, I really like this idea. And so I said, I'll fund it. And so we began and we started, but I don't want to run the company. I'll be the chairman and the chief strategy officer. I want to still teach at Brigham Young and still run the program. And he said, all right. So then we go in, we start getting our first customers, and he says, oh, by the way, I'm going to go to the Wharton School. I said, but look, I've just invested this money into the company, and you have stock ownership, and what? Anyway, it's a long story. So we left. So while I'm running the program at Brigham Young, I have now the startup all on my shoulders. And so I'm running both at the same time. It's a bad idea. It really is a bad idea. And it created some challenges for me. But nevertheless, we were able to still launch the company, have great success early on, and raised a seed round in early 15 and an A round later in 15. And when they got comfortable with my partner that I brought over from APU Solutions to replace my friend that had left, then I stepped up to the chairman role like I had intended to. And so I'm not running Almighty day-to-day anymore. So, but we are currently doing a couple $1 million in revenue. We think we'll do probably 5 or 6 next year, and we'll scale to 20 or 30 the year after that because of the contracts that we already have in place. So Almighty is a mobile SaaS platform for workforce management where we take the towing industry and really workforce management, many industries that we could work with, but we chose the towing industry for a lot of reasons. My experience with APU Solutions allowed me to know of the great infrastructure that existed in enterprise with the towing space, with all the insurance companies, the salvage recyclers and the salvage auto pools, such as Coparts and insurance auto auctions. They transport millions of cars. And so we're becoming the Uber of the towing space, and I suspect that we'll probably have a company in the next few years that does a couple $100 million in revenue. And in a SaaS company that does a couple $100 million in revenue, I can tell you that the value of that is staggering. Since we sold our first SaaS company for 15 times revenue, not earnings, 15 times revenue. So you can make a lot of money from SaaS companies. So I'm going to spend the next, we have to finish at 25 after?
Approximately, yes.
Okay. So I'm going to go really quick on a couple of slides that I think are really important. From the good book, it says, as a man thinketh in his heart, so is he. Now, 3,000 years ago, there was no scientific evidence to justify that maybe this was a true statement. However, about 80 years ago, there was a man by the name of Napoleon Hill that wrote this book, Think and Grow Rich. And it's a great book, actually. It's not just about becoming filthy rich or anything like that. It's about so much more. But he made this statement that whatever the mind of man can conceive and believe, it can achieve. Again, it sounds like a grand statement, but is it really true? As a man thinketh in his heart, so is he. So then we go on now, and as I was doing research for one of my books, then I found in researching brain plasticity that the work that had been done is staggering, and the evidence is overwhelming. So he wrote, even the adult brain is plastic, able to forge new connections among its neurons and thus rewire itself. Sensory input can change the brain, and the brain remodels itself in response to behavioral demands. The existence and importance of brain plasticity are no longer in doubt. The brain is dynamic, and the life we lead leaves its mark in the complex circuitry of the brain, footprints of the experiences we've had, the thoughts we've thought, and the actions that we've taken. The brain allocates neural real estate depending on what we use most: the thumb of the video game addict, the index finger of a braille reader, the analytic ability of a chess player, the language skills of a linguist. But the brain rewires itself on something much more ephemeral than what we do. It rewires itself based on what we think. So now we have the evidence that we've been searching for. And so my advice to you today is to be careful what you think. That your thoughts have great power. And when you believe in yourself and you eliminate self-doubt, and when you invest your time in doing good things instead of things that are derogatory or that won't produce the results that you're looking for, you'll be very happy that you made that choice. We are all born with certain genes, and we are all placed into certain environments, and they matter very much. But at the end of the day, I do believe, based on scientific research, that there is an inner zone within each one of us to be sovereign unless we abdicate. And that is where individual accountability comes from and the individual happiness that you'll be pursuing in your own life. Which is why I have long said, or long quoted, from a source that I have no idea where it came from, that the city of happiness is located in the state of mind. So it's important for you to understand that concept as we go forward. And then I told you about this paradigm shift in entrepreneurship. And I've got to be brief about this because of what I want to cover here at the end. Anybody know who Alfred Sloan was? MIT's Sloan School of Management. All right. He's the guy that GM is known for. He's the guy that took GM to the house. Anybody know who Billy Durant was? Doubt it. He's the guy that founded General Motors, had the horse and buggy, was the first to come up with new features and different things that make it cool looking, became very wealthy, starts General Motors, but he's a loose cannon, not a finished manager. And so he's kicked out by the board, and he goes and starts Chevrolet, becomes bigger than GM, he buys GM, and the board kicks him out again. Showing the very great difference between the entrepreneur who founds the good business and the finished business operator that has the skill to scale. So if you want to be both, there is a great deal of training that you have to undergo. So the other guy, any idea who he is? His name is Philo Farnsworth. He's the guy that founded RCA. From Brigham Young University, actually, interestingly. Whoops. But he was not the individual. What did I just say? I hope I said that correctly. RCA is the company that profited from his technology. He did not. So you have to be careful about your intellectual property. So this is where I told you about Best Final, breaking down the parts and pieces. How do you take in 4 or 5 years and outperform all your competitors? So I looked at it like playing basketball, that you have to be a good basketball player, you have to learn how to shoot, you have to learn how to shoot free throws, you have to learn how to pass, you have to learn how to rebound, you have to learn how to play defense, you have to learn how to dribble, and you can take each one of those skills in isolation and you can practice them over and over again until you become gifted in all of them. Well, business is similar because you've got sales, and you've got marketing, and you've got finance, and you've got operations, and you've got R&D or manufacturing, and so forth. And you can take each one of those and make sure that each one of those departments inside your company are well-oiled machines. And so that's what we did at Best Final from the very beginning. Reverse engineering all the processes that my partner had been trying to put into place since he founded the company. It was a few $100,000 in sales when I bought 50% of the business, and then we grew it to $35 million in 5 years. And it was because of that. And I could spend a long time, but I don't have that much time to talk about. So, now this model is something that I came up with when I was trying to determine how to teach entrepreneurship at Brigham Young. I said to myself, how do we make it easy to understand how somebody can actually start a business and take away the mystery of it. And I went to Harvard, actually, and I visited their entrepreneurship program. I went to MIT, and I visited their entrepreneurship program. I went to Stanford, and I visited their entrepreneurship program. And I left being, as I thought that I would be, impressed by their students and the intellect and their drive and their tenacity, and a bit underwhelmed in the programs that they actually offered to teach entrepreneurship. For example, MIT had a 26-point step, and I thought, have these guys ever started a business? Nobody looks at 26 steps to starting a business. You know, that's not duplicatable, that's not going to work. And so I actually thought down and rehearsed in my own mind everything that I had done, and then I took some of the information that I read from Steve Blank, and I came up with this model. So it starts with the idea, right? You have an idea, and again, I don't have enough time to even fully go over this for you. But before you have an idea, you're going to think about all the competitors over here who are doing everything that you're thinking about. And then you're going to be thinking about the key differentiators of the things that you're planning to do that are very different than anybody else is doing. And you're going to spend a long time, when I say a long time, you're going to spend hours refining what you think those value points are that separate you from everything else going on over here. Are you with me? Okay? And when I've got them as good as I think that I can get them, and I could tell you another story about Henry Kissinger that would make you understand just how much effort that really is to get to that point, not in time, but in effort to refine it. And then when I think I've got it right, I'm going to send it out to 100 real customers and do a survey and see if my hypotheses are correct. And based on the response to those hypotheses, I'm going to end up changing everything about what I just did, and I'm going to then restate everything as well as I can. I'm going to come up with an MVP, a minimum viable product, and that minimum viable product can be wireframes, it can be drawings, it can be if you were an industrial design student, it could be a prototype, and you're going to then take that to customers and put it through a rigorous series of steps to be able to, before you start that business and start investing money, you're going to test your assumptions to make sure they're correct. And whereas my first business took years to get to this point and millions of dollars, Omadi took me really about a year and about $200,000. There's a huge difference. So then to the model. Business model development, customer validation, taking it from a minimum viable product to what I call a MAP, a minimum awesome product, ready to be able to deliver value to customers that they're going to be willing to pay for. And then a step that I neglected, because I originally in this model had this as launch. Seemed logical to me. But after Omadi, I said there's a step that I missed here, because sales got out ahead of product development and ahead of onboarding. So what did that mean? We were delivering not a good customer experience to our customers. Started to experience a little bit of churn on some of our small customers. And then we said, all right, let's hit the pause button here. Let's make sure that our product comes more up to speed and that our onboarding systems come up to speed. And we're going to take sales and marketing, and we're going to take product development and our team, and we're going to move all of those along at the same time instead of one or more getting out ahead of the others. So this process of build is super important, and it helps you to scale lean. And so, yeah. And then scaling, I think we understand what that means. And then leadership through the phases of the startup is very different. the same leader that is required to start the business is a very different leader than the person that has reached sustainability. You can do it. And I've done it, and I've done both. But I actually don't like both as well. I love the startup, and I love the early years. And I love the, getting up to about 100 or 200 employees, and after that, I don't like that much anymore. Which is why I probably have ended up harvesting my companies and moving on. But others that I know have enjoyed that part of it, and they'll scale up to where the company is doing hundreds of millions in revenue, and it can be done. You have to decide what you want. But you can see that in customer validation, in taking from an idea to over here, a real customer, from an idea over here to where you finally have a real customer, that's more of a project-based management style. If you were then getting to operational validation, taking it from a real customer to a functioning enterprise, where you begin to deliver that value consistently to more customers, that is again a different style. So it's all about making and delivering the product, creating raving fans, and then the ability that you will have as founders of your businesses to do the early customer acquisition. So sales is kind of important, and I'm afraid to say that at universities, they haven't yet figured that out. About a third of you may make your living selling something, literally, and it's a very important part of the economy, and it always will be. So, and then when you get to financial validation, that's when you're going to have your best practices, your processes. If you do something more than once, then you have to boil it down into a best practice, a repeatable best practice that allows you to be able to scale without having hiccups. And then finally, the whole objective is that you can leave and go on vacation and know that your company's not going to fall apart when you leave, because you have a whole infrastructure of people that are in place that are trusted, that are competent, and that you can go out and fulfill all the different dreams that you have and not be married to that business. I'm pretty grateful just to have one wife, and that I was never married to my business. So, my top 14 lessons learned. I think it's important that each one of you think about the gifts and talents that you have. If you haven't ever gone through the process to sit down and write out in written prose, eloquent prose, what makes you unique and different, then you're missing a big part of who you are and who you can become. If you're not ready to start a business, then you should gain significant experience first. It doesn't make any sense for you to go out and spin your wheels and waste time if you're not ready. How will you know if you're ready? Because you'll know that you have certain skills and confidence and courage and determination. You have a big idea, and you think that you have the ability to run with it. If you don't have that idea, if you think you're missing certain skills, then you really need, and that's going to be most of you, by the way, then you really need to go out and get some great experience, taking everything that you've been learning here and that you will learn where you're working, with the eye that in the future there's going to be an opportunity sooner than later for you to be able to launch your own career. Read from the best startup books, and several of those are, for example, Nail It, Then Scale It by Nathan Furr, or The Startup Owner's Manual by Stephen Blank. Excellent book, one of my favorites. Startup Leadership, I can't remember the author, it's from Yale University. So you read from the best books. Choose partners carefully, because truly, you wouldn't want to be married to the wrong person, and I guarantee you don't want to be in business with the wrong person. Both are bad. Choose wisely. Remember the Indiana Jones? Walks across the ledge of faith and picks the one guy picks the wrong chalice and the other guy picks the wooden one. And the guy says to the one, you've chosen poorly. To the other, you've chosen wisely. Choose wisely. It's really important. Develop a money plan before you start. You can't go into business, and not know how you're going to survive for the next couple of years. And if your outgo exceeds your income, your upkeep becomes your downfall. Could I just repeat that again? If your outgo exceeds your income, your upkeep will be your downfall. Don't spend more than you have. Learn while you're young to live on not much, so that when you come to that point where you really want to start something, that you have the longevity because you don't need so much money. Money makes people do funny things, and I can tell you that integrity and character mean more to me than any dollar that exists on the planet. If it was $1 billion, I couldn't be persuaded. It doesn't mean anything to me. And you will find that it brings zero happiness to your life. But it can bring other opportunities that are very powerful and important as you learn how to use acquired wealth. But I have too many friends who fell in love with wealth and then who fell out of love with their spouses, which made them fall out of love with their families, which made them very unhappy people, and they were always chasing something that really didn't exist. So I can just tell you that for myself, that integrity and character mean more by far than money ever would. Take care of your own money, but take care of someone else's better. So I have always worried more than anything about taking investment from other people, much more than losing my own money. If I lose my own money, that's my own fault. If I lose somebody else's money, then I was a poor steward. I can tell you specific examples. I'm running out of time, so I can't tell you of where that actually was really important to me. This is a really important statement. Find out what it is that you don't know, and then know it. Find out what it is that you don't know, and then know it. It sounds like too easy. Believe me, important. Pay attention to bottlenecks inside of your business, fix them early. Owner development is a huge key to the company's success. I often say that Napoleon's value on the battlefield, according to the Duke of Wellington, was 40,000 soldiers. And then with all absolute seriousness, I can point to each one of you and say, what's yours? Because in a moment of crisis, that value will reveal itself. And none of you are 10s today, but some of you are 10s in embryo. And all of you are better than you think and can do more than you think. Be patient in taking your rewards because it'll reveal big dividends later. In other words, as you're building your business, don't take money out of it. Live on little until you get to the point where there's a lot of excess cash. You'll be very happy at the exit, I promise. And then when you do go through a harvest, don't do anything with your harvested money for at least 1 year. I'll tell you why later, but not today. Don't do anything with it until you've had a chance to understand what to do with it. And I just want to let you know that you can, in fact, be a great spouse, a great parent, and you can serve others and you can have a hobby. You don't have to be one single person that's all that you do, but it takes great balance to be able to do that. So it's been a pleasure being with you today. I wish you the very best in your future careers, and know that success will follow you as you work diligently and as you really exercise your talents and as you innovate. Thanks. Good.